What's going on, Packers fans? Aaron Nagler here with Cheesehead TV after Brian Gutekunst had his annual pre-draft press conference, and whew, it was a doozy, ladies and gentlemen. I couldn't believe so many revealing details. He gave up every bit of draft info, things he's never, ever said before, including the fact that every single Packers fan should go out and get their own Cheesehead TV draft guide. That's right. He said, hey, you want to know who we're going to pick and everything about those selections? You should be getting the Cheesehead TV draft guide, available in a link in the description of this video that Aaron's talking about. Okay, I kid. He didn't say any of that. It was very boring by design, but you should get a Cheesehead TV draft guide because, hey, you want to be prepared, right? When Thursday night comes along and you're sitting here, probably on Cheesehead TV, watching our live stream and thinking, ooh, who's available? Who might they select? What about this guy? You can look and reference the Cheesehead TV draft guide and be thoroughly prepared. Or if you're out and about and maybe you don't have the guide with you, but you want to read beforehand, you can get the guide right now and say, you know what? I know everything there is to know about each and every possible Packers selection so that when I am out, say at a cocktail party or maybe at a get together with friends, you can impress with your supreme knowledge of the depth within this draft and each and every moment that comes along this weekend. You'll be prepared. Now, obviously, I do want to give some reactions to the things that Brian talked about, though, like I said, it was a very milk toast event, I guess we could say. No question about it. That is by design. They'd never want to give up too much information at the podium, and it was certainly certainly went that route. The first thing Brian was asked about by a media member who used the term top 30 visits, though we have all come to an understanding now that they are pre-draft visits. There are 30 of them. You don't need to say top 30 because most of the guys they're looking at or will not be going early in the draft. But this media member asked about a top 30 visit and the purpose behind it. I'm not going to call anybody out, but the initials are Rob Domofsky. The pre-draft visits, Brian indicated, are about answering questions, things that they may not know medically. Some guys weren't invited to the combine and they want to get an answer there. He did indicate that, yes, every once in a while, it's about subterfuge. It's about legit the optics of bringing a guy in and making other teams think that they're interested in a certain prospect. Something he said he learned from Ted Thompson. And I do enjoy those old stories about Ted and what he learned from Ted Thompson. Brian talked about quite a few things in that regard, but the 30 pre-draft visits mostly are information gathering and questions that they may still have, whether it is about a medical issue or maybe just how he relates to the coaching staff or how a young man processes learning football. And remember, these are guys that you're about to invest a significant amount of money in, and you want to at least get an idea of their mental makeup and possibly how they learn things where they may have difficulties or just their ease of consuming the information that you're going to impart to them throughout their NFL career. Brian was also asked about the draft board and where it sits right now today on Monday before the draft Thursday night. He said it was almost set. They'll have one final meeting tonight, Monday evening, and then it should be locked up until Thursday. Though he did indicate most of that work is done, and they had meetings over the weekend, and most of the board is set. And I think people will, maybe sometimes be surprised by the fact that, when you are studying the draft and doing your kind of due diligence, so to speak, as a fan, and looking at so many kind of whether it is draft guides or draft websites, lists that are made from each and every position. Oftentimes you're kind of going over 300 plus names at a time, like from each and every outlet. And you have to, you want to be exhaustive, of course, but most teams will have like around 100 to 150 names on their draft board after eliminating guys who may have medical issues or just don't meet their athletic thresholds. There are plenty of indications that the Packers are just like most teams in that regard. They'll have whittled their board down, and that's what most of this draft process is about, as far as not only ranking where they put certain guys, positions, etc., but also just eliminating many of the names that you and I have been reading about throughout the course of the last few months. That's where, the real work during draft season gets done, both on, the personnel side, talking to the coaches, definitely the medical people, All of that work is pretty much put to bed tonight. One recurring theme during Brian's press conference was the fact that, we have visions, and I know there's a movie with Kevin Costner, Draft Day, about all this drama that happens during the draft. And, Brian pushed back on that, saying a lot of that work, most of that work, the majority of that work is done pre draft during this process. And so when the draft occurs, you're actually kind of bored. He said it point blank, to be honest with you, it's very boring. Most of your work so that you're not emotional when these things come up, or you're not kind of caught off guard. Most of that work, 90% of that work, gets done prior to the draft, so that when things fall to you, you trust your board. Now, you're still a human, right? And you still have reactions and thoughts and feelings, and you're trying to compartmentalize and be able to go. All of that has been set aside because we've done so much work to make sure that the board is our guide and not your gut or some scout banging the table for some prospect. That's, again, an image that I think a lot of the public has that doesn't really occur, at least not in Green Bay. And it also echoes what Richmond Williams talked to me about in my interview with him for the draft guide. The Packers It also echoes what Richmond Williams told me in my interview with him, the Packers pro director. It also echoes what Packers director of pro personnel, Richmond Williams, told me in my interview with him in the Cheesehead TV draft guide this year about not falling in love with players. Brian echoed that as well, saying, that is, something that occurs certainly when you first start out in personnel. And Brian indicated that, it's a lesson that he watches young scouts kind of learn each and every year if they're new, just in the building a year or two, and you get really attached or really enamored with certain prospects. And then you watch them go and you never have even a chance of selecting them. Uh, that's a lesson that I think every personnel person learns along the way. The more you are able to kind of detach yourself, and yes, you can prefer a player and you can think, oh, I really, want this guy in my program and things of that nature. But there's a very decent chance that a lot of these guys are going to end up in other buildings and you're not even going to have a chance to get them in. Keeping with a common theme throughout all of his appearances with the public and the media this offseason, Brian indicated, he not only expects to make all 11 of these picks, but there's a decent chance he'll trade down at some point and collect more picks, 13, 14 picks, who knows. He wants competition up and down the roster. And I know because of their success towards the end of last year, a lot of the outside of the building thinking seems to be, oh, they can afford to package some picks and trade up and get a guy or two they really like to fill holes. And that is, I mean, Brian literally pushed back on that type of question with Ryan Wood, saying, I just don't see it like that. I want competition. I want more swings at the plate, so to speak, in the draft. And even though, yes, they have a lot of talent, they still have a lot of, guys who are young. It could take steps back. And I just think it's the correct approach for this team, wanting to make sure that there is a lot of competition in each and every room. I don't think we're going to be sitting here watching the Packers be aggressive, quote unquote, trading up a bunch on Thursday or even Friday or Saturday. I think we're going to see them let the board come to them and then maybe even drop back a few more spots at times and pick up more picks. Brian made it clear he wants to continue to bring in a lot of competition across the roster. Those are my takeaways from Brian's pre-draft press conference. Let me know in the comments below. What did you guys think? What did you take away from Brian's availability? And then I hope you'll join us Thursday night. If you're in Green Bay, come on down to the Lyric Room, downtown Green Bay, for the very first Cheesehead TV draft party. If you're anywhere else, I hope you'll join us here on Cheesehead TV's YouTube channel for our live stream all 3 days of the draft. I'll be right here. Hope you'll join us. Thanks so much, everybody. Go Pack Go.